95% of podcasts will never make money. Almost 5 million podcasts in existence. Less than 500,000 are actively releasing episodes still. The only thing that kept me engaged during that time was that when I started it, I made a commitment to doing it for 2 years before I would reconsider my decision. For whatever reason, I don't know if I'm just terrible in job interviews or something, but I couldn't get a regular sales job. Nobody would offer me a sales job, even though I had all this sales experience.
What got you into actually wanting to start podcasting?
I was hustling out on the side. I was studying for my mortgage license, and then I was taking this podcast course, just trying to figure out what am I going to do.
Travis Chappell, a podcasting pioneer, entrepreneur, and networking expert. He's the host of Travis Makes Friends and Travis Makes Money, with thousands of episodes and millions of downloads.
He's sat across the mic from some of the biggest names in the world, including Matthew McConaughey, Shaquille O'Neal, and more. With years of experience and over 1,500 interviews, Travis has mastered the art of turning conversations into connections, influence, and business.
I started a podcast about a thing, and then people were like, oh, we want more. And then it was like, oh, well, why don't I do a course by it? So it was very much like ask method-y.
Podcasting is kind of a new way of networking.
It is, absolutely.
Right now.
Any profession that attracts any sort of status or authority or something like that inherently attracts a lot of people who are drawn to that for the wrong reasons.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about where you think podcasting is right now. What do you think is the state of podcasting in 2026?
All right, Travis Chappell, thank you for coming on the show today.
Of course, Lauren, happy to.
On the podcast, we talk about visibility, how you show out. And so I kind of want to go back to your background, where you started, because I know you as one of the OG podcasters. Right?
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird now thinking about it that way because I never looked at myself like that, but it's sort of happened.
So talk to me a little bit about how you got started in podcasting. It goes back to your college days, what you wanted to do for a career, right?
Yeah, I just didn't really know what I wanted to do after college, which is a strange time to be reconsidering what you're going to do. So, I went to a non-accredited Bible college in Southern California thinking I was going to be in ministry. And then by the time I graduated, I realized I didn't really want to do that. And then I just didn't know what to do after that. You know what I mean? Having a degree in my double majored in Bible and church ministries. So having that degree doesn't really do much for you. And being non-accredited, it's quite literally useless. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's one of those schools that you graduate from that really give you a degree, but not really a degree.
Yeah, it's not actually a degree.
Right.
You can't do anything with it. I have a lot of friends who got degrees in, secondary education or elementary education or something. And they can't work as teachers in actual schools. So they had to go through the same process again at another college just to be able to work at a regular schools. Their intention was to go work in an IFB school. Or Independent Fundamental Baptist was the sort of the sect. So if you don't go do that, which none of those schools require actual accredited degrees, if you're not going to do that, then you got to go back to school. Okay. So I figured out that at school, going back to school didn't really make sense for me. I was already making decent money in door-to-door and during college. And so I just kept doing door-to-door sales afterwards because it was flexible hours. I could work when I wanted to. It was 100% commission. I could make good money. I didn't have a boss screaming at me, telling me what to do and where to show up and when I had to be there, all that kind of stuff. And then all the other jobs I was looking at were just $30,000 a year type things. And it was just oh my God, I can't even think about sitting in an office or at a cubicle somewhere for $30K a year with a boss I don't respect who tells me what to do. It was just no, I'm not doing it.
Right.
Yeah, I just did door-to-door for several years. And then after my first full year of full-time door-to-door, I made 6 figures. I was 22. I thought that was a lot of money. Realized quickly that it wasn't as much money as I thought it was. And then also realized that I didn't want to be doing door-to-door forever. You know what I mean? So I was sort of back to square one. It was I'm good at this thing, but I can't, for whatever reason, I don't know if I'm just terrible in job interviews or something, but I couldn't get a regular sales job. Nobody would offer me a sales job, even though I had all this sales experience. And frankly, it's, that's on them. I would have crushed whatever I had been given an opportunity, but they were looking for people with more experience in this type of corporate sales or whatever. If it was me hiring, I'd be oh, this 100% commission 22-year-old kid that has a mortgage payment and a wife and a head on his shoulders. Yeah, let's give an opportunity. You know what I mean? But for whatever reason, I couldn't get any jobs. So I was okay, now I don't want to do the thing that I'm good at. I don't want to do the thing that I have a degree in. So like, what do I do? You know what I mean? And so I just started, it was like my first foray into personal development to some degree, where I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing and I got to figure something out, you know? So it's the first time I started listening to podcasts.
What were the first podcasts that you were listening to?
Oh, back in the day, it was Jordan Harbinger. At the time, the show was called The Art of Charm, though he's broken off of that, and now it's the Jordan Harbinger show. John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire, was one of the ones I listened to.
I was just with him last year.
Oh, really?
At an event. I've been on his show, gosh, I don't even, I think 3 or 4 times.
John is the real OG. So yeah, I listened to his and Jordan's. I listened to BiggerPockets, Brandon Turner days.
I love Brandon.
Yeah, he's a really, really good dude.
Yep. Brandon and I used to go to FinCon together.
Oh, okay.
Because I grew up in the
that's right.
in the FinCon group, right? And so a lot of those OG bloggers, a lot of them that are still around still don't even do video. You know, they still like the Stacking Benjamins. I think like Joe from Stacking Benjamins. I don't even know if he does video yet. I know like Farnoosh Tarabi just added video. Paula Pant just added video. Like all of these OGs that were podcasting like way, 15 years ago.
Right. They were different worlds at the time. You know, you didn't do video if you were doing podcasts. It was like just not even the same.
What got you into actually wanting to start podcasting?
When I realized that people were making money doing it, you know, it was John Lee Dumas's income reports.
Okay.
He used to publish all of his income like every month. You do a full episode with his CPA running through all of the finances and accounting and all that. And I was just like, this is crazy. Like, this dude's making, $200,000 in a month, and like 68, 72, something like that % of it is pure profit.
Yep.
I was like, that's insane. I didn't realize that people made step of money podcasting. So let's give this thing a shot. He at the time had a free podcast course, so I took that. At the time, I was hustling like an MLM thing on the side.
Tell what MLM it is.
Which one did I not do? Like, I did probably like 8 different companies.
Do you know that I drove a pink Cadillac?
Oh, really? You're AK? Nice. There is a lot of good things. I think the number one thing that's good for is personal development. It teaches you some really good skills. But beyond that, I think there's a lot of really scammy, terrible things happen in the industry. But anyway, I was hustling that on the side. I did a outside sales job for Home Depot during that as a 100% commission, selling like roofing and window jobs at Home Depot. I was studying for my mortgage license. I was going to get my mortgage license. And then I was taking this podcast course, like I'm just trying to figure out what am I going to do. And at the time, there was an MLM I was hustling that was a countertop water machine, and ionizers called Enagic was the company. I was, pretty bought in on it. But what happened was a friend of mine who I had got into that company met a guy knocking doors who was knocking for water purification machines. And so like right when I passed my mortgage exam and I was about to sit in on my supper licensing, and I started selling these water purification machines door to door, and the commissions were better doing that than I knew what they were going to be in mortgages. So I was like, well, I'll just do that.
Okay.
And then I just did that basically until I started the podcast, and until the podcast started making enough money for me to justify the decision to do it full time. I was selling water machines door to door still.
So how long until when you took John's free podcasting course to when you started making the kind of money?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, probably a year before I started the podcast.
Okay.
And then another year, maybe a little bit more than that.
So
Before I started making.
So you started. So 2 years from starting the podcast to when you started making money, or 1 year?
About 13 months after starting the podcast, but it took me almost a year to get out of my own head and launch it after I took the
Got it.
course.
Okay. So what was the first way that you decided to monetize?
So this is sort of interesting. It was like I wanted to do a course because I figured that was like the thing that you do, And so it was like, okay, well, these people, they started a podcast about this thing. Most of the time, it was somebody who like they were already in the knowledge business, like they were selling courses or coaching or consulting or something like that. And so they started a podcast in order to bring people into that. I was not that at all. I was the opposite. I started a podcast about a thing, and then people were like, oh, we want more. And then it was like, oh, well, why don't I do a course by? Okay. So it was very much like ask method-y, you know what I mean? Like go start talking about something that you care about, learn about it, put out some good information. Some other people might find that it's interesting and care about it, and then you can build some things on the back end of that. I didn't end up creating the course actually for a little while longer, but that was the first dollar that I made because I jumped on a call with this guy. At the time, I did free phone calls for anybody who listened to my show. So I was just like, if you are listening to this right now and you want to connect with me, and it was the show at the time is called Build Your Network. So it sort of made sense. It was like a networking show. So it was like, if you want to network with me, let's jump on a call. Here's my Calendly link, go to my, I think it was at the time, like travischappell.com/chat or buildyournetwork.co/chat or something like that. It's like anybody could set up a 15-minute phone call. So I was doing a bunch of phone calls for free just to talk to the audience, see what they liked about the show, see what I could create more content about, see what obstacles they were having, and then started like keeping track of those things. And it eventually informed the first initial product, which was going to be a course. But then I jumped on this call with this guy, and I said, I think I'm going to create a course on, networking. I don't exactly know when, but, should be in the next 3 or 4 months. We should have something. And he's like, how much are you going to charge for it? I was like, I don't know, probably like $297 or something. And so he's like, check your PayPal and check your phone. And I like pulled up my phone and he like sent me $300 on PayPal. And I was like, that was the easiest thing I've ever done. You know what I mean? Like, oh, people are actually interested in this. And so I didn't end up creating the course. So I called him back and I was going to do a mastermind, a 3-month mastermind at the time. And so I ended up doing that. And so I called him back, was like, hey man, I'm going to refund your money because I'm not actually going to do the course. We're going to do this mastermind. It's a 3-month thing. It's $1,000 for the mastermind itself. And so he was like, okay, well, check your phone. And he sent me the difference between $300 and $1,000. It was like, I'm in whatever, whenever you launch it. So that ended up becoming the first thing I ever sold was like a mastermind. And it wasn't enough to go full time with it, but that was sort of the beginning stages of that.
I love that because that gets into like knowing what your audience wants, selling to their pain points and all of that. I love that. Now, when did you switch from, and I think it's an important point. So many people, and I want to get into this kind of the nitty gritty of where podcasting is now, but so many people think like, oh, I'm going to start podcasting. It's going to be easy and I'm going to start making money right away.
95% of podcasts will never make money.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty crazy stat. Yeah, because this also includes the podcasts that make like $5,000 a year.
Right.
You know what I mean? 95% will never make money.
Right.
If you're doing something to make money on the side, I would not recommend the podcast unless it's something that you're cool with the timeline that it takes to monetize, because you like my thing is like, if you hate your job, if you hate what you do and you need an exit and you want to start something on the side to start making money, like a podcast is not going to be going to take way too long.
Yeah.
If you like what you do and it's not like you hate your job, you just are kind of like about it. It's like, oh, it pays the bills. It does. You know what I mean? Like it's a job. I go to work, I do the thing, whatever. You know what I mean? Then, okay, cool. Start a podcast. It might be 3-4 years before you make any money, but it might be about something that you genuinely enjoy. It might open up a bunch of doors that you didn't think were open to you previously. It might introduce you to some people who have opportunities to offer you. Like there's a lot of other reasons to do it.
Yeah.
But for purely making money, like it's not the.
So what made you not give up in that year then? Because there's also a stat that says that most podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes.
Yeah, 90%
Yeah.
podcasts don't make it to episode 10. So there's almost 5 million podcasts in existence. Less than 500,000 are actively releasing episodes still, which to me makes it still go completely blue ocean to some degree compared to other creator channels, right? You look at like TikTok or Instagram, or you look at the volume of people that are creating on those channels. It's much more than 500,000.
Right.
So of the 500,000, then you take another 10% of that, and now those are the shows that actually make money. You know what I mean? And then you take another 10% of that, and those are the shows that make real money. And you take another 10% of that, and those are like the wealthy ones. I mean, so it's like a very, very, very small percentage. The only thing that kept me engaged during that time was that when I started it, I made a commitment to doing it for 2 years before I would reconsider my decision.
Why did you make that commitment?
I knew it would take some time. I didn't have any, reference as to what volume of time it would take. But it just made sense to me. It was just like, I know this is probably going to take a little while to build. So I know I'm not going to be very good at it when I start. So let's just do it. And then I'll just commit to this release schedule. I think it was 3 episodes a week at the time. I'll commit to 3 episodes a week for 2 years, and I won't stop until I get to the 2-year mark. And then if at the 2-year mark, nothing has happened, then at that point I'll consider, moving on from it. Though it was like a 2-year thing for me.
I think that's a good rule of thumb for people to set that goal, and any sort of goal to say, I'm going to try this for X amount of time, because if they don't, you don't give yourself the full momentum of what it's going to look like.
That's right. Yeah, you don't even get past the callus building phase, the part where it sucks, where it's like, I'm not very good at this. The content's not very good. I don't have a team dialed in. I don't have an editing process dialed in. I'm not making money. It's costing me money and or time and energy every month. You know what I mean? So there's a big period there where it's sort of the lonely chapter.
Were you editing yourself, or did you have a team?
I got a team from the beginning. Yeah, I tried editing my trailer episode. I did edit my trailer episode, and after like 2 hours, 3 hours of editing, I got a 15-minute episode out.
It's not my strong suit. I mean, in order to do this podcast, I have like the producer,
Yeah.
a whole editing team.
Although, to be fair, now it would be significantly easier.
Now with AI.
With AI tools, yeah, they make it very, very, very simple.
Seriously, I think back to that.
Like my producer does not edit my daily show currently. It's my assistant who does.
Okay.
And my producer sat on a call with her for like 2 hours, trained her, and she does all of those episodes now.
Oh, nice.
So it's not as difficult. You don't have to have this like background in audio engineering to be able to throw a podcast together.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just the barrier to entry is much, much lower than it used to be.
So when did it switch to Travis Makes Friends?
So that was it several years? Yeah, several years. It was when I was building my software company. It was because I started noticing that the interviews in my calendar were no longer fun. They were like, I gotta put out content. I can't miss a day. Like I preach consistency. I have to be consistent. And so it just started becoming more of a time suck to me. And I'm like 800 episodes in at this point. You know what I mean? So we put out a bunch of content on networking and then kind of figured out along the way that it was really just making friends if you look at it. And the Build Your Network brand limited the guests that would say yes to a conversation, because like if you go to like a comedian or something like that and you're like, we're going to talk about networking, they're like, when come on, like I don't know how to do that. And I wanted to have conversations that branched beyond just like the online entrepreneur or entrepreneur space. And so Travis Makes Friends was just a much, much easier brand to get other people involved in and to get other people to say yes to conversations.
And then obviously that's work because you've interviewed some amazing people in that show. Talk to me about some of the top names that you've gotten.
The number one is probably Shaq.
Yeah.
Because that's the one who everybody knows. And now we did another filming project with him that we're releasing soon, hopefully in the next few weeks. So he's the big one. And then what I tell people is like, when people ask me like, oh, who have you interviewed that I might know, is like, well, what do you like? You know what I mean? Because now it's between my shows, I've now interviewed over 1,000 people.
Okay.
So it's like, do you like psychology? Because I've interviewed a good amount of those. Do you like, personal development authors? I've interviewed a lot of New York Times bestsellers. Do you like conversations with billionaires? Do you like professional athletes? Hey, like what do you like? You know what I mean? Because then I can recommend episodes, because now it's just such a high volume of really interesting, eclectic mixture of a group of people who I just find interesting or fascinating to some degree.
And you've had some great, and I think your show is great. And then you launched another one, Travis Makes Money. Why did you do another one?
Yeah, so the reasoning kind of got convoluted a little bit, but what happened was we initially rebranded Build Your Network to Travis Makes Friends, but then it was like the listenership started going down.
Okay.
Because the audience was very cultivated and very specific, and they were entrepreneurs, wanted to know how to build relationships, and they're like, I'm talking to some comedian about comedy. It's like, well, that doesn't translate.
Right.
Listenership started going down, and so, but I knew that there were more subscribers to that RSS feed, that channel, because we were doing it for so long, and so I was like, I'm just going to branch off a new show called Travis Makes Friends, and just have that live on its own, and try to build that as sort of like an education, self-help channel. And then clearly people who are subscribed to this podcast are entrepreneurs who care about entrepreneurship. Yeah. So why don't we just do an increased volume? We'll go after sponsorship income, and then we'll just make the show completely about money, all things investing and entrepreneurship and building businesses and side hustles and all that kind of stuff.
And
we rebranded it at that point. So It's been through technically 3 rebrands, for Build Your Network to Travis Makes Friends, and then to Travis Makes Money. And then when I rebranded Travis Makes Money, I split off Travis Makes Friends as its own like new show.
Okay, see, I got that backwards. Okay, so Travis Makes Money is actually the original Build Your Network.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then, because I feel like a lot of your bigger guests are usually on the Travis Makes Friends podcast,
yeah.
right?
And only in person.
And only in person, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people that are like, oh, we love to do it, but they're not going to be able to travel out there or whatever. They live in this obscure place, and it's like, all right, well, we just can't do it then.
Right.
I'm just not going to do any of those ones
over
Zoom or Riverside or something like that. Whereas Travis Makes Money is almost exclusively on Riverside.
On Riverside, yeah. I've done a couple Riverside on this one, but I don't prefer it because I think I can never get my lighting right.
It's just not as good.
It's just not as good. I live in upstate New York. I don't have a podcast studio that I can like just drive up to like I can here in Vegas. So like it's just not as good. Now, I know you've had like John Maxwell and Grant Cardone and a lot of other kind of big people in the entrepreneur space. And then next up, hopefully, will be Gary Vee. I'm watching you, Gary. I'm get you. I'm gonna get him.
Open invitation, Gary.
I just got him for somebody else, so that's why
did
I'm
you?
just letting you know.
I knew he was doing a little bit of a push. Like he's messaged a couple of times back and forth with me on Instagram and stuff. We just have never been able to find like a time that works for him. Because again, I'm also kind of picky at this point. Like they've offered like 15 minutes over Zoom, and I'm just like, nah, I can't. Like I've been basically prepping for this interview for 9 years. So like I want to do a good job with it. You know what I mean? I want to have some time, and I want it to be in studio in person. I want to get through all the stuff I want to get through. And not just like mark it off the list as like, well, I got him, but it was like 15 minutes on Zoom and he's in the back of a car or something. You know what I mean? It's like I prefer.
Didn't we set up Ryan Serhant? Did we do that? Did I help you with that one?
We talked about that one. It did end up happening for the same reason.
Okay.
Because they were going to do Zoom. And I was like, I'm not going to do Zoom. So I was like, I'll come to New York at some point.
Okay.
And let me know. And then we just kind of lost touch. But,
okay. Well, we'll see if we can get that back.
Yeah. Well, especially if I go to New York.
Yeah. Exactly.
If I go to New York, I can knock off Ryan and Gary. And
exactly. We'll figure it all out. Yeah. We have I was at the Super Bowl this year, and Gary and I at the Sports Illustrated party had seats right next to each other.
Oh, nice.
So it was fun. I will say that Gary talks a lot of crap and swears a lot, but I think he's probably one of the kindest people that I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, you can see it radiate from him.
Literally one of the kindest human beings I've ever seen. Just literally, you could see him at the Super Bowl. He stopped every person that wanted to talk to him. He stopped and looked into his eyes and gave him attention.
Yeah.
He couldn't get 5 feet without getting stopped, and he made. And I think that's why you were talking about networking, right? It's so important. And I think podcasting is kind of a new way of networking.
It is, absolutely.
Right now of how do you make those connections, but it's not just about sitting down and like checking it off. Mm-hmm. You and I have networked for years, and I don't even remember the first time how we got connected, but I value your friendship to say, like, I know I can reach out to you and be like, hey, do you need anything? And you can do the same with me. Mm-hmm. Where I just value, because I feel like you have integrity, and that's what I appreciate about you so much, is that you are a man of integrity and of your word, and you stand up for that. And I think sometimes in this podcasting world, we're losing that.
Yeah, totally.
Just in the world in general.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the world in general, but it's any profession that attracts any sort of status or authority or something like that inherently attracts a lot of people who are drawn to that for the wrong reasons as well. Just like Fortune 500 CEOs or pastors or whatever, like any position that draws that type of attention can, really pull in some bad actors as well. So it's really interesting getting to know that behind the scenes. Like the more I talk to all these different people, the more I start to realize, like I sort of kind of categorize them in my head as I go throughout the conversations. It's like, oh, this is somebody I'm probably never going to connect with again, versus like, oh, this is like my people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, it happens, and it's going to happen, and you just got to get better at deciding.
You just have to figure out who your people are, right? And know who to trust and put in your circle. Mm-hmm. Now, was there a reason why you didn't start a faith-based podcast? Because I think, actually, I had a client of mine the other day. He's a Christian. Mm-hmm. I'm a Christian. I was brought up in like a strict Presbyterian home, but I've never had like a faith-based business, right? Yeah. And I've never been one to have like Christianity and faith in the center of my companies. It's the center of my life, but it's not the center of my companies. And he brought up, should I write a book for faith-based audience, my next book? And I said, I mean, you can, but then you're going to pigeonhole yourself into the faith-based market, which is a slimmer market, right? And he's been on, all the faith-based shows, 700 Club and all that kind of stuff. Was there a reason why you didn't go that route, knowing you wanted to be a pastor?
Well, at the time, I was asking a lot of questions about all of that. Okay. So I didn't feel like it was like I felt like if I had started something along those lines, that it would have prevented me from being able to change my mind about some of the things that I was raised with. So like now I am not a Christian, and I'm not a faith-based person. So I'm glad I didn't make that decision.
Okay. Yep.
And that's obviously why I don't do it now. But
Right.
at the time, I was more just like, I want to give myself the freedom to figure this stuff out. And if I go online and start spouting off opinions and things like that, like I just find that it's more difficult to pull yourself away from those opinions when they're publicly stated like that, and you start arguing for them. And then like I said, I think it prohibits flexibility, and you sort of start looking at truth through a biased lens versus like a objective lens. And so I was trying to keep it out of that.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great answer. I think that when you bring it into a business, that it then suddenly people look through that lens, right? When I did my last book, I did like a faith-based tour and then a regular-based tour. Like I did the Today Show and then I did like the 700 Club, right? That kind of stuff. But I think it can definitely. That I was kind of wondering that, because so many people are like, well, I want to go the faith-based route, but then you get stuck in like the Dave Ramsey route, right?
Yeah.
And then in that bucket, and I've had the pleasure of working with like Bryce Crawford, who's amazing, like, and he's definitely in that faith-based bucket, but has also tapered into the other part of podcasting as well. Let's talk a little bit about like where you think podcasting is right now. Like, what do you think is the state of podcasting in 2026?
Yeah, well, we live in clip culture, which I don't think is a revelation to anybody. So I think more podcasts are consumed on a clip basis than the full episodes are. But I don't look at that as like a bad thing necessarily. I think it's sort of a bummer for the state of people in general that everybody's moving to short form consumption versus long form, and attention spans are getting smaller. But as a creator, you just have to sort of adjust to those things and try to hook people in with clips and get them to long form. And I think that there's a safe space for people who want the long form to still create the long form. Because that to me is where true like growth comes from. Like, I don't know how many saved posts I have from shorts that I've watched, but it's a lot, and like you can't even remember what you saw on Instagram yesterday or 3 hours ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if I listen to a meaningful podcast, I get a lot of good stuff from that, and things that I can implement and things that I can actually take action against, or things that I can talk about on my show.
Yeah.
So I try to still consume long form myself, but we also got to create a bunch of short form from the long form. But it's also another great reason to have a podcast, because if you're not doing something that's really long form, then clips can become a very, it's a time constraint at some point. If you're running a business and you have a family and you have a podcast and you're trying to do short form stuff, and it's like, there's only so much time.
There's only so much time in the day.
And so, if you create one long form piece of content, you can do 4 interviews in a day, and that's a full month of full content calendars across every single platform, from LinkedIn to X to a newsletter to all short form video, like, because everything can be pulled from the 4 long form episodes that you did in a single afternoon. You know what I mean? So I think that's interesting. The second thing I would say is that I'm very interested in the next iteration of podcasting as it relates to the evolution into more shows rather than just a podcast.
Like your new show coming up.
That was one of the reasons that we did it. Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Tell everybody what the name of that is, because you and I had talked about working on some guests together for that one, but it's going to be amazing.
It's called Dinner Party. And so the idea was that, Travis Makes Friends, I sort of, when I rebranded it, I started looking at a lot of data on friendships. And that's when I found out about like the loneliness epidemic and the research that even the U.S. Surgeon General put out, calling it the next big public health crisis.
I just did a podcast on that about the men's loneliness epidemic.
Yeah, and men are a little bit more affected by it than women are in general, but it's still across the board, like everybody. You know what I mean? Like, women are also lonelier than they've ever been, and it's only getting more and more so every year. So through that research, I was like trying to think of, as an entrepreneur, I was trying to think of like, oh, what's a business that we could build to help solve this? And ultimately it just came down to like, we could start something, but I just don't think that it's going to be the solution. Like another technology company is not going to be the solution to something that is primal, that's like a biological need that is wired into our brains since the beginning of humankind's existence. You know what I mean? So my thought was like, well, if we can just encourage more people to have their own dinner parties and connect with people in person again, and instead of only connecting with them on social or seeing a highlight from their week on their Instagram story, just like, well, just reach out to that person, invite them over and have a dinner party and have some food and eat together and laugh and tell stupid jokes and have a few too many drinks and like do like, you know what I mean? Like just have some fun. So dinner party was sort of like, we're going to do a dinner party. And then the challenge is like, if you're watching this, go host your own dinner party, essentially. So it sort of goes into that branding a little bit, but that was the concept, was like, if there's a bunch of podcasts out there, how do we make something that sort of stands out? And how do we make something specifically for YouTube? Because I've never crushed on YouTube. Like YouTube's always evaded my ability to figure it out.
Have you talked to Julian Dory about that?
Actually, no, not a lot.
You should.
I probably should.
Somebody that is killing YouTube and has the super long form 3+ hour show.
Right.
I mean, that's where he kills it. Not only is he top in Spotify, but I know
we should talk a little more about
you've had him on your show, right?
Yeah.
You should talk to him about that.
Yeah, I should actually reach out to him, especially about this new show. He'd make a great dinner guest.
Yep.
But yeah, so to me it was like, how do we make something that's visually appealing, that's something that people will want to see? How do we make it to where we don't have to do a ton of explanation around it, because the visual hook will just be the people that are there. And even when we posted like a couple of the pictures from it, I had people commenting and DMing me. Yeah, and they were like, is this AI? Like, did you this all done on AI or whatever? And I was like, no, it's not. Ooh, that's a silly question. But then looking at it was like, well, that's exactly the reaction that I want, is for people to be like, at least it's a scroll stopper where you're like, wait, what is Shaq doing in a room with Alex Ramosi or whatever? You know what I mean? So that was the intention with it. And then it sort of allows us to build like a super clippable show where it's like the volume of clips that we're going to get from that is into the hundreds. I would think, watching through it a couple of times, even like stuff that doesn't make it to the final cut, because we filmed for like 2.5 hours. The final cut will probably be like 75 to 90 minutes, somewhere in there. So it was like an hour of it cut out. But even the stuff that we cut out, it's like, well, there's a ton of clips in there that we can still use to promote the full episode, and that will probably take on a life of their own to some degree on social, and probably a lot of people will watch the clips instead of tuning into the full thing. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking about things more from that perspective. Like, how do we build like a show that works more like a show versus working like a podcast where it's just two people sitting down type of a thing? Not to say that can't work anymore. It's just more difficult to stand out.
I love that. So the next steps for that, are you going to be doing it monthly, or this is kind of like a trailer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like the pilot. You know what I mean? So like, it didn't go perfect. There's some things I would have changed. There's the production was expensive. There's a lot of stuff that that we learned putting together the pilot episode. Even like the setting, we were like, oh, this would be cool, and then it kind of turned into more of like a roundtable interview versus like the actual vibe that I wanted, which was more like a casual dinner party setting. So some of that stuff we are hopefully going to be able to change and do better on the subsequent episodes and things. But yeah, hopefully monthly release schedule is sort of what we're going for. And then we'd like to basically figure out a way where we can do like one-on-one interviews with each of the guests, just to get more content out of the episode. So it's sort of like podcast-esque, and then leading up to the release of the episode that has like all of the guests that we've interviewed over the past 4 or 5 weeks. So it should still be like weekly episodic content, but like the core like anchor show would be like once a month.
I love that. I think it's interesting, because I'm always thinking about what is the next step, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even with owning a PR agency, what does that look like? Getting people booked on podcasts, what does that look like? What is 3 years from now look like that I wish that I would have been able to predict sitting here at this very moment?
That's what I think it is. I think it's like sort of the combination, the marriage of Hollywood and independent productions, where they're sort of like starting to already intertwine. We've seen that with, Backrooms and Obsession, and a couple of these movies that have come out of YouTubers' minds that have done extremely well in the box office. And so I think Hollywood is more interested in that. And now Netflix and Hulu and some of these other companies are bringing podcasts onto their platforms and sort of like playing into that sandbox a little bit. So I like the idea of like really thinking through what's a show versus like what's a podcast. They're a little bit different, to some degree. So like, is the set is it a dynamic set? Are we kind of moving around? Is there movement? Is there something happening here? Can we play a game? Can we do something? You know what I mean? So we're just trying to think of it more like that. I think like the flagship example that you can point to is probably like a Hot Ones.
That's what I was thinking.
Even though they're still more podcasty than showy, in my opinion. But you know, it's a really good, like they're sort of like the pioneers to me. Is like they created it's entertaining and valuable at the same time. It's a true mixture of value and entertainment. Which I think a lot of people have tried that and it's not really worked super well.
Yep.
So that was another thing with Dinner Party where we thought through that, like how can we, like we a lot of the people that I know are sort of value-based creators, like, you know, like informational people and people who've written New York Times bestsellers and have info products and consulting and all this other stuff. So I was like, well, how can we bring a little more entertainment value to it? So we partnered with a company called Dropouts Productions, Dropouts Studios, Dropouts Media, I don't know, something. But it's owned by my buddy Zach Justice, who's a comedy YouTuber. And so he was one of the dinner guests that was there and allowed for some entertainment to be thrown into the mix. And so it was like whenever the conversation, like even watching it back, whenever the conversation starts getting, it's not necessarily boring because the information's still really good because the guests who are there are providing amazing information. But I guess maybe stuffy would be the word, like where it's completely intellectual. You know what I mean? When you watch a show that's like 100% education based.
I mean, you do have Alex there.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's like he's a.
We like to talk about business, right?
Yeah, and he's really, really good at it. Yeah. He's great at articulating his thoughts, and he's a writer by nature, and so that's why a lot of his stuff is blown up, in my opinion.
Yep.
But it was really helpful having a Zach character in the mix because like as soon as it started like getting a little bit dry, I would say Zach would jump in with just like a quick witty thing that made the whole table start laughing. You know what I mean? So that's the setting is that it's just like, hey, we're just all sitting around a table talking, eating some food, hanging out.
I love that.
There's a lot of really great, valuable conversations in there, but there's also quite a few like laugh moments. Like even when I watch it back, it's like, oh, that's funny. Like that's objectively funny. You know what I mean? Even if I did produce it and I'm biased towards it being good content, I'm like, oh, that I think that'll like be really helpful with people sticking around to watch the full thing. That the retention I think will be higher than it would be if it was just a bunch of like valuable, like value-based content creators.
Yeah. It's interesting too is I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA from all the work that I've done in TV, and there's actually a SAG-AFTRA podcast agreement. And I'll send you the information on it, but there's a rise in SAG-AFTRA podcasts too because you get SAG-AFTRA has like an AI clause where you can't use your name and likeness using AI. Me as a SAG-AFTRA member, if somebody were to clone me, using AI, like SAG would have a problem with that because I'm underneath the union. And so when it comes to SAG podcasts, there's a huge growing trend now with, all these people coming out of TV, right? And now they're members of SAG. And when me as a SAG member, let's say your podcast was a SAG-AFTRA podcast. All you would have to do is have a form. When I come, all I would have to do is say, are you a SAG member? And if I said yes, then I would just have to sign a form. Now, the time that I spend with you goes towards the hours that I need to qualify for my health insurance benefits.
Interesting. Okay.
So there's a couple things that you can do because I've been trying to get this podcast to qualify, and I just haven't had the time to fill out the paperwork. Yeah. But a lot of shows, there's two agreements. There's one where you make under $5,000 a year, and there's one where you make over $5,000 a year. And a lot of the big shows have our SAG podcasts because they're protected under the union.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it does happen where like, I don't know if you have to hire union people to like do your camera work or I don't think you do. I'll have to look into that a little bit more, but it's just an interesting thing for you to know too, because you're having a lot of these big people that it might be like more attractive for them if they get SAG hours.
Yeah. Something we should look into for sure.
And especially for that one, if you're going to have a round table of a whole bunch of people that are SAG members, that they could actually be getting paid from the union for doing that show.
Meaningful, yeah. True.
So I'll send you that information.
Please do.
Yeah, because there's all those kind of things that, from my perspective, coming out of the broadcast world and being a SAG member, that I think a lot of podcasters don't understand that can happen too.
Sure, yeah. And that's what's interesting to me about it is it's the intersection of traditional media and non-traditional media.
Yep.
So I think that there's going to be more opportunities for people that are thinking about it along those lines, even for business owners. Like I'm fascinated with, there's this, I forget the name of the coffee shop, but there's a coffee shop that's doing like this short form series on Instagram and TikTok and stuff, all the short form platforms. And it is not an advertisement for the coffee shop. It's just that it's filmed in the coffee shop at the counter, and it's like scripted in 60 seconds at a time, just like funny scripts put together with these actors that come in and just order coffee, and it's well done, and they did a really good job with it. But it's not sponsored content. It's content that is native within the context of the business that they're trying to promote, which is
So smart.
to me the future of media and advertising. Is that it's not like this episode is brought to you by whatever, you know what I mean? Not to downplay that is our bread and butter right now, but I think the future version of that is companies thinking about it more from a perspective of like, how do we create a piece of media that in and of itself is entertaining or valuable enough for people to tune into that piece of media, and then by nature of them tuning into this media, it also happens to bring attention and awareness to our brand, right? So like there's this Groundlings have you heard of Groundlings? It's like this improv troupe, a really, really well-known one. Like a lot of people from SNL have come out of Groundlings and stuff, and they had this show that's set in an office, and I forget the main character, but it's built around this like just goofy, character. And even in my mind when I was watching those, I was like, see, this is like a perfect example of what like anybody who is in this space could do this, where they have this short form, funny sketch comedy thing, even if it's not comedy, whatever, but this particular one is comedy. And it's all filmed for the purpose of actually entertaining the audience. It just happens to be that they're in the office of Salesforce or whatever, you know what I mean? Like their branding is there, their logos are there, the employees are wearing Salesforce shirts, but it's not them saying like, go check out this, use this discount code and talk to this, whatever. There's no call to action. It's just that it by nature spreads brand awareness because the content itself is so good. You know what I mean? So that's sort of what I'm thinking. Even Zach, my co-producer on Dinner Party, he does a lot of like blind dating comedy content on YouTube, and had this dating app called Vibes reach out to him. Like, hey, we'll pay you for a 60-second spot in one of your shows. You know what I mean? And he was like, how about instead of that, you pay me more and we do a 6-episode miniseries, like a reality TV dating show, essentially, and I'll host that and we'll post it on my YouTube channel. So they took the risk with him, paid him the money. He put out a 6-episode reality show on his YouTube channel. And during the airing of that show, their app downloads went up like 1,600% during that time. But it wasn't like this show was brought to you by Vibes. It was called the Vibes Villa. It was the Vibes Villa dating show. That was the whole thing. And like each new member that came in was like, here's their Vibes profile. They're on this app. You know what I mean? So like it just naturally encouraged people to be curious about the company because the whole setting was based around this thing, but it was not an advertisement. You know what I mean? It's sort of like that's what I think is like the next evolution, because if you think about it from the perspective of like what's good for the consumer, that is just objectively better for the consumer. It's objectively better for the consumer to not feel like they're getting pounded with ads, and where they can just watch something, be entertained, or get value either way. And then it just happens to be in this setting where you can't help but see the brand that you're trying to bring some lift to.
Exactly.
So I think there's a lot of room for that. And that's kind of our goal, is like if we can build this in a way that allows us to like have a strong enough pilot episode where we can go get some, brand deals and sponsors to come in and be like, hey, do you want to, like in my mind, it's like, oh, a luxury home builder that wants to show off their properties to a affluent group of people. It's like, well, let us use your home for a dinner party episode. And by nature of it being there, it's like your branding will be in the background. It'll be clear that this is your luxury home, your development. But it's not sponsored by you, but it is sponsored by you. You know what I mean? So that's kind of
I think about like the drink company, like whatever you're drinking.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like alcohol brands,
or
food companies,
like a Poppy or something like that. Or
yeah, food and beverage.
Food and beverage would be great.
Yeah, luxury real estate development.
Anything.
Yeah, like some of those I think would be really simple. Like I look at that as an integration versus a sponsorship.
Well, that's what they talk about a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So the goal is like we prove it, and then we also are thinking like, well, if this does well, then we spin off our own production company and we just start producing shows for businesses that want to like do this
Sign me
for
up.
our next show. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, instead of just having a podcast or something like
Yeah.
that. It's like, how do we think about this from like, how do we create some real entertainment and real value here that people want to watch regardless, and it just happens to be in the setting of whatever your business does.
I think that's brilliant, and I think it kind of goes into what you're talking about, the loneliness epidemic, and I see even more and more, in-person events and people wanting to come together and wanting to sit down and talk about like what's really going on. I've seen that a lot, where a lot more collaboration, in the past. I've been doing this a long time. In the past, it used to be very competitive, and now I feel there's a lot more collaboration. I mean, there's still those competitive people,
Of
but
course.
those collaboration events are much more heartfelt. I feel like there's a lot more of that going on. So it sounds like you got a lot going on, right?
A little bit, yeah.
And you're married and you have a couple
I
kids.
do, yes.
So what besides the dinner party, like still continuing the Travis Makes Money, Travis Makes Friends. If people want to get a hold of you, where can they find you to come on the show too?
Just hit me up on Instagram, probably
Okay.
the best place. Yeah, at Travis Chappell on Instagram.
Okay.
2 P's, 2 L's on the spelling. But yeah, you can find basically all my stuff there. TravisChappell.com. You can find everything there, including all of my socials and stuff. So yeah, go one of those 2 places.
Awesome. You gave me probably one of the best compliments, and I don't even think you know that you gave me a compliment a few months ago. You said that you're the only publicist that I like working with.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I said, now that you're saying it, I think there's like a few. There's only a handful of publicists who, when they reach out to me, I actually respond like all the time.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a yes or a no. It's obviously not 100% yeses,
Right.
but yeah, because I get hit up by, I don't know,
I get hit up-
150, 200 a month on a down month. You
Right.
know what I mean? So yeah, there's very few who I'm like, okay, I know that they're picky enough as as a
We are
PR
very
rep
picky.
to
Yeah.
actually have some sort of a curated list of people. They're not just taking money from anybody. So yeah,
Well, you know what's funny is when people call me a publicist, I'm still like, oh, because like I just see myself as an entrepreneur that owns a PR firm. Like I sit in your seat longer than I've sat in this seat.
yeah.
And I look at things from your lens of like, if I was sending somebody a pitch, would I read it? Would I like it? And that's how I've trained the whole team.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't want to waste your time.
Fair.
That's just, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. Nobody wants, we were all busy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So thank you for that. I did share that with the team because they were, it's hard sometimes
It
to like
is,
just
yeah.
get met with crickets, and you're like, but I really have a good person that like would like, I've got a celebrity. Do you want
Yeah,
them? Just answer my email for 1 second,
Right.
But thanks for joining me today. I mean,
of course.
I could go on and on and on with you about the changes in podcasting and how we can monetize and all of that, but we could do another episode down the road on that.
Anytime.
But I definitely want people to go and check out your shows because you do a great job.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So thanks
Yeah.
for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Lauren. Always good to see you.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in to the Visibility Podcast. If this helped you see your brand differently, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next strategy. And if you're ready to stop being the best kept secret and start leading your industry, head over to leveragemedia.com and I'll see you there.